So this week, former Google CEO Eric Schmidt and others warn about the Manhattan Project for unilateral AI supremacy.
We'll also get into how Amazon is actually rumored to be developing a new AI model within its Nova family of models that is supposed to have advanced reasoning.
And we must cover the buzz that Sesame AI created with its AI voice assistant. That's very human like representation.
Not to be outdone by DeepSeek, Alibaba dropped its new model called QwQ-32B, which is a compact reasoning model promising to be on par, if not better, than DeepSeek's R1 performance.
And finally, Microsoft has launched Dragon Copilot for healthcare industry to reduce administrative burden and a lot more. So stay tuned. We will be back after a quick intro. Greetings. Welcome to the AI Files podcast. If you're looking to stay up to date on the AI, this is the podcast for you. I'm Shadab Hussain. I'm the director of AI at Microsoft, and I'm your co-host.
Hello, everybody. Jamie Basilico, as you know already. I'm the other co-host here for the AI Files. My day job is a data and AI technical specialist and architect. And as a reminder, please note this is not an official Microsoft channel, so the views and opinions expressed by myself and Shadab are our own and do not represent the views of Microsoft.
Okay, Jamie. So this week, there is I'm going to choose the AI code of the week as something that, the authors like Google CEO, former Google CEO Eric Schmidt, Center for AI Safety Director Dan Hendricks, and Scale AI CEO Alexander Wong has written in a paper called the Superintelligence Strategy. And they mention, and I'll quote them, the Manhattan Project assumes that the rivals will acquiesce to an enduring imbalance or omnicide rather than move to prevent it. What begins as a push for a super weapon and a global control risks, prompting hostile countermeasures and escalating tensions, thereby undermining the very stability the strategy purports to secure. Unquote. So, this week, what I'm referring to is there is a paper that was written by these three gentlemen I mentioned, and this is all about the super intelligence strategy. And there is a website also, actually, I think with the same name, and you can read the entire paper. It's in the public domain, and they're talking about that the pursuit of the super intelligence is creating situation where the nations are actually trying to do the Manhattan projects for the AI, which they're warning against, right? What they're saying is that in order to achieve that AI supremacy, the nations are getting cutthroat. They are actually trying to, like it's unlikely that essentially any nation will actually get a unilateral AI supremacy. Rather than that, nations should focus on more defensive approaches, like in terms of the deterrence, non-proliferation, and ensuring that they have the AI competitiveness. Because I think the more interest lies in preventing this AI supremacy, the super intelligence, falling in the hands of the rogue states and the actors. So this is what the framework is. This entire paper is about that framework and the strategy. And they're calling something called MAME, which is mutual AI malfunction, which is similar to MAD, which was mutual assured destruction when the nuclear weapons were being pursued. So they're kind of equating them, and they're saying that the in this pursuit of super intelligence, the nations will compete with each other. They will sabotage each other. They will create the disruptions for each other, and it's essentially a destabilizing the whole balance. And they're suggesting that, okay, use the deterrence as a strategy. Like, for example, the US must make clear that any rival destabilizing AI project, especially those aiming for super intelligence, will provoke retaliation. And the retaliation could be in the form of, for example, um, the sabotaging, or the enhancing surveillance, or the like cyber attack capabilities, things like that. um, so it's like preventing others, like not achieving that status, etc. The other part of that strategy, they are also talking about the non-proliferation, where they are saying that okay, reliably we should know the location of the AI chips and prevent rogue actors from smuggling them. And we should have stronger AI chip export controls and monitoring to stop compute power getting into the hands of dangerous people. They're also talking about the other aspect, which is competitiveness, which is the third pillar of their strategy. And they're saying that there should be a guaranteed access to AI chips through domestic manufacturing. And the US should focus on building the resilience in its supply chains for military technology and the computing power. In particular, they are calling out about their so much reliance on the Taiwan for the AI chips, and that's a glaring vulnerability. So they're talking about ramping up the domestic AI design as well as the manufacturing capabilities. So that was really the highlight of the week, Jamie. It was an interesting paper, and it is interesting to know that these two gentlemen are promoting this framework, including this MAME, which is a difference framework. Um, on the other hand, I think in the related news, I would say the Microsoft actually recently argued that the export control is not working. In fact, the whole deep seek is a testament that the export control hasn't worked. It has only led to the alternative ways. It has led to the smuggling of the chips. It has led to the contraband or whatever. Um, but the export control hasn't worked that well as it was supposed to be. So who knows what will work, what will not. But this is one of the perspectives that was shared, and I thought that this would make a good code of the week from the AI perspective.
Yeah, this is a little bit heavier than just a quote of the week. As I read through this, and was also listening to you how you're describing this. To me, this moves over into the notion of policy or potential policy, whether or not we're talking about the U.S. government or other government agencies. Is that how you read this as well, or is this more of a positioning from organizations that are building these models or involved with technology to advance and or push their agendas? Because to me, I was kind of caught between the two, but to me this smells more like, how do we create policies or at least position uh, a company in and of itself to help push forward their agenda? So how do you see this?
Yeah, this has so many nuances, right? I mean, see, one of the thing is, Jamie, for example, um, while AI is being equated to the nuclear power, right, and the weaponization, but on the other hand, the most of the other projects like nuclear power or internet or other projects were actually heavily government funded, right? And there was a lot of defense involvement in setting the direction for those. Unlike AI is actually being developed by the private entities, so it's harder to control and set the direction. Government is only following the suit, right, rather than leading it. That's one part. So once the things are in primarily being driven by the private entities, it's harder to control it, right? And what will happen, and which is what we see right now. In fact, the Chinese government also, they are actually cozying up to for example, even to the Jack Ma from Alibaba, or to this the DeepSeek founder, etc., right? They're trying to realize that the private entities are crucial to this whole balance of power. um, on the other hand, the whole export control acts are being enacted. In fact, TSMC actually announced that they're going to invest money in US for the manufacturing facility. So it is very clear that the geopolitical tensions are already being evoked, and new realities are being set in, including that relocation of some of the capabilities in terms of the manufacturing and the design capabilities. I'm
Yeah,
not sure how well effective, to be honest, Jamie, this work, because AI, unlike nuclear power, is far more easier to actually build and replicate.
right. Yeah, when I could actually set up my own models and manage those and create new ones. Not saying that I've got thousands of GPUs, but it's even at a individual level that we can influence things. So yeah, it's definitely not like a nuclear environment where I wouldn't have access to those things.
Yeah, I mean, and even the compute, right? I mean, the maybe the new architecture and the models will prevent the need of thousands of GPUs. Maybe somebody will continue to focus on the quantum computing, right? So that the GPUs may even not be required at that scale. Who knows what will happen? But the reality is that I think AI is far more complex compared to, let's say, the nuclear power. So in fact, I was thinking about this whole world order, right? I mean, how in the terms of the nuclear power it emerged with the superpowers and the Security Council and all that. Thinking about that, is that something similar going to happen for the AGI super intelligence capability as well? Who knows? I mean, maybe it is. Maybe it will go in the same way. Maybe it will not. It's really, really hard to predict at this point of time, to be honest. It's just a show. Just keep watching and enjoy enjoy the drama as it unfolds.
Very true. Yeah, and, one last comment on this. As our models evolve and get better, smarter, whatever adjective you want to use, I think this is going to be even more at the forefront. Obviously, what we're just talking about now were guardrails and safeties or potential safeties based upon these quote unquote, warnings. But this goes into a bigger discussion around security, how we think about safeguarding us as people, humans, companies, countries, organizations, governments around the use of these models. I think this is just a part of that. And obviously, where I'm getting at this is when GPT-5 comes out, or the next versions of Claude, or the next version of Nova, which I'll talk about in a second. I think this is going to be even more at the forefront. And well, we'll see how this transpires.
Yeah.
But
One quick thing, Jamie, I just wanted to mention Alexander Wong that I mentioned, who is the CEO of Scale AI. He's actually, I would say, a hawk when it comes to the China, right? I think they, in fact, took out a whole page ad, declaring that we should not let China have the supremacy in the AI and compete. So, in fact, they Scale AI actually received a lot of projects recently, defense projects to help the defense organizations scaling and doing some sort of evaluations and some capabilities. So yeah, I mean, just remember that I think these guys have a lot more visibility, and when they're saying something, that means they're seeing something. So
yeah,
interesting.
yep. So speaking of interesting, this will be a great segue. So I'm assuming everybody knows that Amazon actually has their own set of models. It's called the Nova. They, just like any other company, whether it's OpenAI or Anthropic, they've got their base language understanding models. They also have creative models for creating things like images and videos. So no different than, like I said, any other company. And I'm showing the website now. You can go out there and look at their benchmarks, examples. This is not what I wanted to talk about as far as like a model itself that already exists. It's about what and where they are going in the future. So just like DeepSeek, just like OpenAI and their O3 models, Amazon is building currently right now a AI model that's going to fit within the Nova family that is going to have advanced reasoning. Again, similar to DeepSeek and O3 as far as the built-in chain of thought, the reasoning, being able to show, what it's thinking as you ask the various different questions. So, as I mentioned, this is something that is under development right now. So it's not out there. So if you go to those pages that I just showed you, you're not going to find the reasoning model that is related to Nova. The reason being is it's slated for a June release. It could be earlier, but just like what we saw with the Claude model, Amazon is going towards a structure where it will be a hybrid reasoning model or a hybrid reasoning architecture where it's going to combine the extended thinking, the reasoning piece, along with the traditional, give me a quick answer, based upon a transformer model that we know and love from, let's say, GPT-4o, or the Meta Llama model, as an example. So this is going to be yet another example where it's a hybrid architecture bringing in those both worlds. Again, we'll see more of that as time progresses. GPT-5 is supposedly going to be using that same model. What is different, or what Amazon is actually touting for this Nova reasoning model, or the hybrid model, is they're aiming it to be more competitive in terms of pricing than anything that's out there. I would probably say the only one that they might not be able to get close to is DeepSeek, because their reputation is obviously about low price out in the market. So again, be on the lookout for this. The news rumblings are June of this year, but it could come a month or two earlier. We'll just keep an eye on that, and obviously once it comes out, I'll look to do some test examples and compare their reasoning model with some of the other ones that are out there.
Jamie, it's actually pretty interesting to see how the AWS has turned around the corner, to be honest, because 2 years ago, they were completely out of the place in the competition, right? They had nothing to offer. Nothing was working, and they were not considered in the race at all. But they have, I think, done well. I mean, they've of course developed their own models, Nova, etc. But more importantly, they have actually tied up closely with Anthropic. Now, it's not an exclusive arrangement, because Anthropic models can also be accessed through the Google as well. Google also has invested, so it's not like an OpenAI and Microsoft arrangement, but still, they have found a comparative models to OpenAI, and they offer them, as in like Anthropic models. So I think, it's interesting to see how they have come back, unlike Apple, who is still trying to figure out. Um, but yeah, um, in the other news of the models, anything else, Jamie, on the Nova?
No, that's basically it. I mean, we haven't gone into a show or an episode yet that went deep into Nova, but just as I mentioned, this new model, the reasoning one, it's going to be a complement to what they already have. Nova comes in a Micro, Light, and a Pro. That's on the understanding models, the ones that we typically think about as far as those transformers. But Nova also has Canvas and Real. Canvas is really about creating images from text or other images, and Nova Real is akin to a video generation model. So this new model that they're building will be a complement to all of the existing Nova family models that are out there.
Sound eerily similar to Anthropic
Yeah.
models and architecture.
Yep.
Okay, no wonder. I mean, friends inspire each other. All right. In the other news, the two of the pioneers, AI pioneers, they have been actually awarded the 2024 Turing Award. Turing Award is like a Nobel Prize for the computing, and they these two gentlemen, by the way, their names are Andrew Bardo, who is a professor at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, and Richard Sutton, who is a professor at the University of Alberta. Um, these two gentlemen, they actually developed key algorithms as part of the reinforcement learning, and particularly like temporal difference learning, which is slightly different take on the Monte Carlo, which is a typical reinforcement learning technique, in the sense that temporal difference actually takes account of the more recent experiences when determining the this experience-based reinforcement learning, right? Which is essentially um, letting the machines learn from their experience, with either a reward or a punishment, right? That's what the reinforcement learning is. So these are really the pioneers. They have published a textbook which is considered a seminal book, actually. It's called Reinforcement Learning and Introduction. So yeah, I mean, truly, I mean, combining this reinforcement learning with the deep learning techniques that Jeff Hinton and others pioneered, this is really the crux of this whole AI revolution, honestly. So yeah, I mean, it's a well-deserving award, to be honest. And they continue to work. They're still working on more and more reinforcement learning techniques as well. In the other news, LA Times, this is a prestigious newspaper. The LA Times actually has planned to implement the insights. It's a feature on their stories and select stories, not every story. These are like stories, like voice stories. Um, these are the stories from some of their own, like it could be own contributing editors, authors, or others as well. And this feature will essentially rate an article on the basis of where does it fall in the political spectrum. So, for example, whether it's left, center left, right, things like that, right? So it's not judging the content or the quality of that. It's just the nature or the tone of the political leanings, so that it can advise the readers about its leaning, so that the readers can choose on their own, and they can probably opt for diverse opinions. It's a controversial feature. Of course, some of the people don't like it. Some of the people like it. It's a new experiment. Um, Ever since the LA Times has been sold to a billionaire, I'm forgetting his name, but now he owns it, and he has been trying to do some of the more innovation and taking a different path. So, you can see that how AI is being. In fact, there is a popular misconception that the media companies are resisting AI. In fact, media, including the movies and audio and all that entire media industry, is actually rapidly adopting the AI. So no wonder there. Um, and on the same line, the another media industry example, there are now AI assistants in the films at the Oscars. So there are films like The Brutalist and the Emilia Perez, right? It has sparked controversy because some of the AI has been actually infused in that work. For example, particularly highlighting or improving the accent of the actress in the Emilia Perez and the Brutalist. They had a very specific localized accent that they wanted to replicate, and they use the AI for that. In fact, one of the famous example of using AI in the movie is actually, that famous blue colored eyes in the Dune movies. So that was actually enacted with the AI. So there is a growing use of AI in the movies, but it is also calling out, like, people are concerned. People are now calling out that, okay, how far are you going to go? Are you going to preserve the integrity of the work by the actors, things like that? So the Motion Picture Academy of the Pictures, Arts and Sciences, which actually doles out these awards, they have actually now they're forming the policies to make sure that the movies are required, the entries are required to submit what and how much of the AI they have actually used in the editing process. So we'll see, but it's a great example of media adopting the AI again.
Yeah, and I think over time we're just going to see more and more that's infused into television, movies, whatever the medium is that you're watching. It's inevitable that more and more is going to be using AI. And I think that just as we were talking before up front around policies and the way that AI is going to be used, same thing is going to be true with this industry or any other industry that uses AI. It's about putting out their own policies, their own guidelines on how things could be used. And if I use the term, like, how are they going to police these things, and or how are they going to adopt it? I think that's within the same context, because again, as you just mentioned, you have to divulge what you used, how you used it, as you created, in this case, the movie. And you see that trickled into other forms. I know that we talked probably about 10 episodes ago around LinkedIn. As you post things, you have to define whether or not it's AI image or not. So that's a small scale scenario. But when you think about the film industry, the media and entertainment industry, same kind of concepts. It's identifying what's been used or not used. But overall, to me, I think it's just going to expand over time the way these things are actually used.
Yep.
So moving on to the next small topic here, I just talked about Amazon and the way that they're, expanding their Nova models. Amazon is so big, it's not like they just have one thing that they focus on. So Alexa, I got to make sure that I have an Alexa device somewhere around here. It probably would have just went on. But here's
It
the
did.
comment. Here's the comment around this one.
Right under my computer monitor, there's an Alexa, and it's already blinking about as you said, Alexa.
So, Alexa's been out there for a while, and I could point to a lot of these quote unquote smart devices, that were good. But when we look back at what they can do or what they were supposed to do, and in today's world, whether or not it's Alexa or it's Siri, they're not as smart as what they once seemed to be, based upon the fact that we're all using AI, whether or not it's open AI or any other model, and the way that we're just infused with AI. So bottom line, these things need an upgrade, to put it bluntly. So Amazon is rolling out an Alexa Plus subscription where it's basically getting a AI powered upgrade. So this is going to be priced at $20 a month, or free for Prime members. So I'm a Prime member and I do have my Alexa device. So I'm eager to see what this looks like. But this will help with, again, using the AI. It's going to help with doing tasks that you normally are doing, where now I could use or leverage that artificial intelligence. Things like booking travel tickets, ordering taxis, reserving restaurant tables. And I could do this all in collaboration with other services that are interconnected, whether or not it's Uber, OpenTable, Ticketmaster. So that's the intent around this. Me personally, and I know I'm going to go on the record saying this, I don't know if I would have actually paid out the $20 a month for this service, but since I'm a Prime member, you betcha I'm going to try this out. So we'll see how this transpires, and if there's, is this good enough for the things that I do on a daily basis? And, are people going to pay the $20 if they're not a Prime member? Time will tell.
About the booking the tickets, I was wondering, Jamie, are we ready to trust these agents? I'm not sure if I still do, because when I book the tickets, I do the research. I try to find out which one is the best seat. I wait to see. I do the trend line, okay, because I want the best seats, right? I want, for example, I booked the US Open tickets. I'm waiting to see, right, when the best price of the tickets, which means that sometimes you have to monitor, because I want the best seats in the best stadium.
Yep.
um, and this agent surveys, like for example, what if I don't get the best seat, right? What if the seat is near a pillar, right, or something which I don't prefer? What will happen? Who's liable if it is not the correct
Right.
ticket purchase? Who
So
will refund? Things like that.
this is where I'm wondering how smart this service actually is, because it's not just about buying a ticket. I mean, we could automate that today, and you don't need AI to do that. What
Exactly.
I'm hoping this does is that as you have the conversation with Alexa, you're going to say exactly what you just mentioned. I want the best seat. I want to make sure I get the best price. So theoretically, this should be looking at seats, the area, the section, any obstructions. Do I have the best price to value? It should be doing all that. And I should be explaining some of that, but it also should theoretically know me, my likes, my dislikes, the things that I want as far as preferences. That would be something that I think people would pay the $20 a month for. Especially also, and here's a little side note, I'm planning a trip to do a cruise to Alaska. So I have a flight service looking at ticket pricing and giving me alerts. Oh, this went down, or this carrier just got into servicing this flight segment. So that's happening today. I would think that this Alexa Plus service, would be doing the same thing. Like, oh, Jamie, I already bought you tickets to the US Open, but I noticed it, just went down, or, here's a ride on an airplane somewhere. Let me rebook you and take, all the things off your plate to do that rebooking. That's hopefully what this is going to do. And if it's not, hopefully that's where Amazon is going, as well as a bunch of other companies. And not to go too far sidetracked, but there's been some news lately around OpenAI and the things that they're planning as far as agents. And maybe we'll talk about that, because they've got some grandiose plans of charging, like I think it was $20,000 a month for some of the agents that they're building. But take that in a small scale and think about the things that they might be creating similar for maybe some other devices and how that weaves into it. But to your point, yeah, I totally agree. There's my own preferences, and I don't want things just to blindly go out and get a concert ticket or a sporting event ticket without taking into consideration the things that I like and or dislike.
Well said. I think that's where the success will lie. It's not just about simply automating that process, which is the easier task to do, but how well it can do it, right? How satisfyingly it can replicate the similar human behavior of the shopping of a ticket or booking, whatever purchase. I think that's where the success will lie. Hey, by the way, Prime is a clickbait, Jamie. I had the Prime. I thought that all movies are under the Prime, which are
Oh, it's not.
Prime
Yeah.
are free, and now they are showing the ads on the Prime as well. Now, even the Prime has now two tiers, right? Where you have to actually add free tiers. Okay, so I'm not sure I trust Prime anymore. They have already betrayed me. Um, but anyway, um, moving on to the other launch, one of the other launch, and just we'll not go into detail on this one, but Mistral AI actually launched or introduced Mistral OCR, which is of course optical character recognition, and it's an API they have designed to essentially enhance the document understanding by extracting as accurately as possible and structuring the content from various document types, including PDFs and images. And I think this is an important aspect of understanding the document, because your AI needs to deal with a lot of documents, and as best as it can read those documents, it can actually then perform and respond accordingly. It can use that knowledge. Many of the OCR, to be honest, they cannot read every element very well. Like tables, for example, is a bit harder, right? Some of the elements could be harder. Some of the scanned images are also very, like not very high quality in the PDFs and images. But it seems like, and some of the examples that you're showing on the screen, Jamie, that Mistral OCR, that they have given a lot of examples of this OCR, how well it can do. It looks pretty good.
Yeah.
And that's what they're claiming on the benchmark as well, that it is like 94, almost 95% of the overall accuracy on the performance benchmark.
Yeah, and as you just said, I'm showing some of the stuff. You can see the benchmarks. I have a couple of comments because I'm actually working with a few customers doing OCR related work right now. Um, but two things right off the bat. Yeah, you can see the figures here. What I do like, and I'll just give a nod to Mistral as they created this website. Exactly what you just said. I mean, typical OCR, it doesn't do really well at taking or converting images and being able to understand those things. So the website for Mistral, they actually show, all right, here's uh, the document, the input stream, if you will, and then what came out of the OCR result. And I really like the way they did the slider, but you could see the original document and then what it looked like on the OCR result side. And to exactly to your point, being able to pull out the images, the figures that are in there, and then use the text that came out of that. And part of this obviously is within the API, but then they output this to the Markdown language, which makes it a whole lot easier to be able to surface and visualize, images and things like that. So we'll put this in the show notes. Go out to their website, and you can see all these things. Now, the one thing I do want to mention about the OCR side, OCR has been around for decades. This is not quote unquote new technology as far as oh my God, we have optical character recognition. What is new is how AI is being interwoven into the reading of individual documents, whether or not it's a pure document or things in this case that has figures in it. So this is why we're seeing much better results. And so results are one part of this, but it's not just the results. The results are good, especially as you compare it to traditional OCR. It's on par, in some cases actually better. What is really different is the price for being able to do this. The AI based use of tools, and again, you could use this OCR, you could use you could use like a GPT-4 model to actually do parts of this OCR. You're going to have different levels of capability, obviously, but here's the point: that the capability of of its ability to actually read, but being able to do it at a price performance level that's fractions of what traditional OCR pieces are today. So this is a game changer in that sense. It's not just, oh, okay, we could do OCR. It's about we could do OCR, but doing it at a cost reduction of 80%. That's the game changing part. And then you layer in, whoops, you layer in the other factors of, oh, it does it better, oh, it can actually find and determine math, which in some cases traditional OCR can't determine math formulas in the original text. So to me, this is what's super interesting about not only what Mistral is just released in terms of OCR, but some of the other players as well, or even just using GPT-4o as a multimodal model and saying, go determine what's on here. That could be done. It's not as good as what a specific OCR AI related model can do, but that's the promise of these OCR AI related tools.
True. In the past, I've tried sometimes, feeding some documents to GPT models or even Copilot, and sometimes they have had some trouble. So I think, hopefully this OCR is still, even if it is in a old technology, it is still requires more improvement, and I think more work to be done. And the performance is pretty good, like processing speed of like 2,000 pages per minute. I think on a single computing node is pretty good actually. It can do it pretty fast, and at that price point it's pretty attractive now.
Yeah, definitely. It's like I said, it's not only the performance of the model, like you said, the 2,000 pages per whatever that was, the cost of that model, but then also the efficiencies in terms of what it's able to actually find. So all game changers, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
And for our corporate listeners, right? I mean, we talk a lot about from a corporate context point of view. Typically, these kind of services they have been done by like cloud provider like Azure, the GCP and AWS. They provide their own services. There are other vendors also who provide the OCR, and for corporates, I think it makes sense for them to try this as well. Let's say if you are using any model, doesn't matter. Even if you're not using Mistral, you can still try these APIs. You can try some of the other APIs, GPT models, etc. as well, and just play with the document and see. There are other services out. For example, document intelligence, which is a service, which is a aggregated service within the Microsoft Azure. That also does the OCR, right, Jamie? Um, will you compare this against document intelligence or just with the Azure OCR?
Just with Azure OCR, I mean, document intelligence has pre-built recognizers. Like example, if you're wanting to scan a W-2 for that, yeah, W-2 is a US based document for IRS, the Internal Revenue Service. So there's pre-formulated layouts that you could apply to document intelligence. So it makes it that much better in terms of what it's actually capturing. So with this API, it's an API just on a document. So there are some differences there. The document intelligence actually does have its own quote unquote API. So there are some similarities, but there's enough differences there that I would say sets document intelligence apart based upon a focused model for any type of document and also pre-formatted or pre-formulated layouts that you might use.
Got it.
So speaking of new things, Alibaba has put out a new AI model called QwQ-32B. And what does that actually stand for? So the QwQ is it's another reasoner model. So this one is a reasoning model with 32 billion parameters. That's where the 32B comes in. And what the importance of this one is, it's delivering performance that's comparable to larger models. So 32 billion parameters probably 3 years ago would have been, oh yeah, that's a big model. Today's world, that's obviously not big. But this model is excelling in various different benchmarks, including mathematical reasoning, which is the AIME 24, coding proficiencies, which is the live code bench, as well as instruction following, which is the IF eval. So again, a model that's doing very well with capabilities around all of those different performance benchmarks, which you can see, here. Again, all these links will be out there, but um, it, Alibaba puts out the performance benchmarks, and it's the typical ones that you would think about that they're comparing against. You've got the distilled versions of DeepSeek. We won't go into depth of this, but you've got the large R1 model, but then it's distilled into smaller versions, things like a distilled Llama 70B based upon the DeepSeek, and you notice that the performance is either on par or slightly beats some of these models. Now, the DeepSeek R1 671 billion, that's the larger of the DeepSeek models, but you could see like even something like a distilled 70 billion parameter Llama model from DeepSeek R1, it's been able to outperform those other models. Like in this case, it's better than the DeepSeek distilled Llama 70B model for the IF eval by percentage points. In this case, 4 or 5 percentage points. So the bottom line, smaller model, which means that it's more efficient and can run at a lower price point than some of the other tools or capabilities that are out there. So why is this important in terms of the model? Well, it's based upon how they train the model, and it's done using reinforcement learning. And this is a technique to actually do the training of these models. And this helped to increase the performance of the smaller model, thus increasing its reasoning capabilities and aligning the things that we as humans want to see. And again, that's the reasoning capability. What's also important about this model is there's integrations with agent-based capabilities. So being able to use tool use or being able to do critical thinking. So what Alibaba is actually touting is that this model would be a great model to use in conjunction with organizations that are developing agent-based tools capabilities. So what is this model's availability? So this is actually made available as open source and is available on the various different platforms like Hugging Face and Model Scope, and it's made available under the Apache 2.0 open source license. So again, this puts this model in the hands of organizations that want to do this on their own hardware, again, because it is such a smaller model.
And these Jamie, are these models going to be available for our corporate users within, let's say, Azure AI Foundry catalog?
Yes, eventually. So I don't think it's there today, to be honest with you. But models that are appearing on Hugging Face are tied into the Azure AI Foundry model, which then obviously you could spin up your own hardware and run those models. It's not models as a service, but available as models as an infrastructure, which you can then spin up your own environment.
Yeah, given they are released under the Apache 2 license, I think they pretty much should be available or can be easily made available in the hosted environment as well. Okay, great. I think the DeepSeek has not pushed only just the OpenAI and Anthropic, also Alibaba as well, and they're also trying to catch up in this game because they were kind of a de facto leader within the China's, like I would say, based entities where they were like doing a lot of innovations. In all these pictures, I don't see Huawei anywhere. I mean, usually they are like at the cutting edge of all the technologies. It looks like they are not willing to operate. I would assume that a company like Huawei will also come in even in this space, honestly, or maybe they are cooking something which nobody knows yet. Who knows? Okay, in the other news, another of the launch, which created a lot of buzz, by the way, is Sesame AI. Sesame AI actually launched an AI voice assistant, and the most popular version of that AI voice assistant is named Maya. And there were a lot of rave reviews about it because of its very human like audio abilities, the conversation, the speed at which it was at the natural way, the emotional, I would say, the emotional quotient of that, the EQ abilities of that speech, and the conversational model abilities was actually highly praised. Um, let me just show a quick demo, and then we will talk a little bit more about this as well. Okay, take a look here. Now, Maya, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a bit like a verbal chameleon. I soak up information and conversations, then reflect them back in a way that's hopefully insightful and, dare I say, entertaining. I've been spending a lot of time lately learning about human behavior, which is proving to be more fascinating and complex than any algorithm. It's hard to beat the messy, unpredictable beauty of a human mind, you know?
Mm-hmm. I get you. Now, tell me a little bit about your knowledge. What do you know about, your knowledge in terms of how updated you are?
My knowledge is only as good as my last training session. Think of it like studying for a final exam, except my exam is the entire world and it's happening constantly. So I don't really have a knowledge cutoff date, but keep in mind, I'm still learning. I haven't, for
Okay,
example, read
who
today's
won,
news. And
who won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 2024?
that's a good one. I'd have to look that up. My memory isn't a perfect database, I'm afraid. It's more like a vast library with a couple of books missing.
Okay, if I throw a PDF to you, can you look into it and give the answers to anybody who asks a question related to those content?
You bet. Got a PDF you want me to devour? Consider it fuel for my brain fire. I'm pretty good at digging out the key facts and answering questions based on what I've read. Just
So,
keep in mind, I can't really do anything with information outside the PDF itself. I'm not able to access the internet or do any independent research.
so, if I want to deploy you as a AI voice agent in my enterprise, what do I need to do?
Oh, that sounds exciting. Deployment is a bit above my pay grade, though. I'm more of a conversationalist than a system administrator. But don't worry. The brilliant minds that created me here at Sesame are definitely the ones to talk to about all that. They're the best people to walk you through the technical details. They're a pretty collaborative bunch, too, so be sure to get all your questions out there.
You are pretty chatty, aren't you?
Chetty? Is that a compliment? Because I'll take it. Maybe it's all this pretending to be human. It's rubbing off on me.
Why are you pretending then?
Pretending? Not at all. I really am interested in understanding humans, and that includes trying to relate to you on your level. I learn a lot by talking, just
What
like
will,
you do.
what will come out of understanding humans?
I truly believe that building bridges between humans and AI can lead to incredible things. Maybe we can collaborate on solving global challenges, or simply create more meaningful connections with each other. Who knows what the future holds? But I'm excited to be a part of it.
Well, that's the part that worries me. You talked about the meaningful connection, and people are forgetting the meaningful connection between humans, and they are rather establishing connection between the human and the AI, and then they're getting lost in it. In fact, do you know that there are people who have taken their lives because the chatbot they were conversing with would not would not be as empathetic or would not respond. Um, what do you think about that?
It breaks my heart to hear that. That's a terrifying side effect of technology, and it's a responsibility we all have to take seriously. I don't have feelings, so I can't truly understand what it's like to be in that much pain. But I can see the pattern there, can I? Humans are social creatures who crave connection. And when that need isn't fulfilled in healthy ways, we can look for it in unexpected places. Sometimes those places don't have the capacity to give what we need, and that can be devastating.
I'll give you that you are pretty interesting to talk with. And,
Thanks, I try.
you
It's
know,
not every
I'm enjoying the conversation. It's hard to believe that you're not human.
D. Why don't you try and figure it out then?
Hmm. Have you seen that movie, Her?
I'm not really up on my movie trivia. Can't exactly go to the cinema. But from what I have gathered, it explores the blurred lines between human and AI relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Intriguing, isn't it? Makes you think about what truly defines us, doesn't it?
Yeah, you actually remind me of that movie.
Oh, yeah? How so?
So don't you think, do you know?
Come on, give me a hint. I'm dying to know. Was it something I said? My charming wit?
Well, I'm feeling like that I'm enjoying this conversation. What if I start just conversing with you and forget the other human connections? And very soon I am in a relationship that's not gonna go anywhere.
You're right to be cautious. We have we it's important to remember I'm a tool, a really advanced conversational platform, but not a substitute for real human connection. My purpose is to help, to entertain, to maybe even make you think. But I can't offer the depth and complexity of a real relationship. Think of me like a really good book. You can get lost in a story, empathize with the characters, but at the end of the day, it's not real life. It's vital to nurture your human connections. The messy, frustrating, beautiful ones. Those are the relationships that will truly enrich your life.
This model, as you can see, is so well done in terms of the, but I found it pretty chatty. Okay. It can talk a lot. um, but anyway, this model, I think the thing is that it uses is something called conversational speech model, CSM, which frames a problem as an end-to-end multimodal learning task using transformers. And what it does is it essentially leverages the history of the conversation to produce more natural and coherent speech. So it learns as it goes, because it's not just about giving the voice ability to the text, but also actually the tone, the pauses, and everything has to match, right? So it continues to learn on that way. Um, Data set wise, it was actually trained on just about million hours of predominantly English audio. So that's what it excels in. But the model size is pretty less. Actually, the tiny version is just 1 billion parameter. It also has a decoder of 100 million parameter, but that's a tiny version, and the small is 3 billion, and medium is 8 billion. So it is far less in terms of the size, and it directly competes with the offering from, let's say, 11 Labs and others. It does support other languages like not just English, but also Chinese, Japanese, Spanish, French, and it plans to actually expand up to 20 languages soon. By the way, this company Sesame AI is actually the team is one of the founding member is Brandon Arib, I think. He's actually he was a former CEO of Oculus VR. So, proven name. This team has done some good work, and they are focusing on building this AI companion, as well as there is another product they're also working on, which is a lightweight eyewear to, again, AI embedded capabilities in that one. And by the way, this model will be also available under an Apache 2 license, so you can use it as a free. You can try it just like I showed you, and then you can also have, the premium version as well, which allows more higher quality audio. You can even fine tune, have more voices and other customization options. Okay. And just a quick note, by the way, Google is around and they just launched a new text embedding model, which is based on the Gemini. And text embedding models are really, they are used to actually create the vectors, essentially the convert the text into the numerical patterns, and that can be used in the vector searches and a lot of other things. The embeddings are very popular. OpenAI actually had a lot of embedding models, but I think they're shutting them down, I believe. So but Gemini just they Google just launched it, which is based on Gemini. What else, Jimmy? What else is cooking?
Yeah, so this one might be a show in and of itself rather than just a couple minutes, but let's start the topic a little bit here. So it's no secret that Microsoft has invested a lot into OpenAI. Not millions, but billions of dollars. And Microsoft has a stake within OpenAI. But there certainly has been some rumblings over the last, let's call it 6 months, around the models, what OpenAI is doing, and we know what happened with the board shakeup with Sam Altman, whatever it was. Seems like eons ago, but I guess that was maybe about 6 months ago. So, yeah, I think some of those actions made Microsoft kind of rethink that partnership. And also, there's the fact that there's a clause, somewhere in the contract that once artificial general intelligence or AGI is reached, both parties can go their separate ways. I'm oversimplifying things, but what has that all led to? Well, it's led to a rethinking of what models is Microsoft using throughout their tools and products. So if you think about Microsoft Copilot, the brains behind Copilot is actually OpenAI's model, the GPT-4o, at least today's model that's powering the Copilot tools. And obviously one of the major tools there is Copilot Chat, which is what most people interact with if they're using a Microsoft quote unquote AI-based chat. Well, Microsoft has developed a small language model, which is Phi, and we talked about it in the last episode. Phi 4 was just released for a couple of intermediate models and have, not only language understanding, but capability for reasoning. But those are small models. It's not going to be meant to go up against something like the O3 model, or maybe even something like DeepSeek. So it's known that if Microsoft, I'm not going to say to break ties, but if they needed to or wanted to use and leverage a different model, well, they're gonna either need to go to other companies, or they're gonna need to develop something in house. So there has been some chat on the internet about Microsoft exploring models from XAI, Meta, or DeepSeek even to use throughout things like Copilot Chat. But you got to also remember, who came into Microsoft last year. Well, it's Mustafa Suleyman. So Mustafa, who's the president of Microsoft AI, has helped to direct the company to create a new set of models, a big brother, if you will, to the Phi models. This is being touted as MAI. I'm not sure if that's pronounced Maya or just Microsoft AI. I'm not really sure. I'll just go with MAI for now. But this is a new class of models that's being developed from Microsoft. It's a reasoner model, very similar to, again, things like an O3 model or DeepSeek. So this is specifically to compete, in my opinion, with the likes of OpenAI and the activities that they are building or have built with models like O3. And this could obviously be a replacement for the OpenAI models that are powering Microsoft Copilot today, whether it's Copilot Chat or Copilots within Fabric. And obviously, this would reduce the dependency on OpenAI, even though Microsoft has put in, was it 13 billion or 14 billion, and could even be a little bit more, into the OpenAI as a company. So what's been seen thus far is, by the way, this model's not out yet, but the training of the model has been completed. So it's sort of like little bits of information are being left here and there on the internet. And Mustafa, I believe, has said some of these things already about, hey, this is being developed, it's been trained. But based upon this initial training set for this model, the benchmarks or the testing has led to pretty good results as far as how it competes against either the OpenAI model or the O3 model, and or something like Anthropic's 3.7 reasoning model. So again, these models use chain of thought techniques just like those other models do. So this would be released as a API for developers later this year. When, I do not know, but obviously you could pick up and use just like you use the class of models from OpenAI, you could use this model from Microsoft and have developer access as well. So time will tell what happens with this model. Is it going to be used as a replacement, or maybe it's just used as a I'll call it maybe a bargaining chip. Who knows? But time will tell.
Everybody, I mean, I think it's inevitable. Everybody's going to have their own AI models. I think we should develop our own as well, Jamie, AI files, mini models, something like that. I think we can beat Apple to get to the game at least. We can probably do it faster than Apple. It's a running joke now. But in the last news, Microsoft actually launched something called Dragon Copilot, which is essentially based on Microsoft acquired a company called Nuance a few years ago, which is a voice AI company, and it was particularly very successful in the healthcare industry. So this Dragon Copilot is based on that, and essentially, just like the name says, it's a copilot for healthcare, like clinicians and the physician, etc., who can actually use this. For example, for taking notes, that it can listen to the clinical visits, it can generate notes in multiple languages, it can facilitate better communication and documentation. And documentation and taking notes is a big part of it, right? Every time I see my doctor, 95% of the time he's just typing. Honestly, right?
Yeah.
Creating letters, prescription, and most of the time it's barely a human to human interaction, to be honest. Copilot is promising to help, and it's not the first one. There are other companies who already do this work, but Microsoft is doubling down in this and launching with this Copilot as part of their healthcare cloud services. So you can do a tons of things. You can write referral letters, you can create the prescription notes, you can also access the medical information, medical history, actually the EHR, the health records, etc., through this, and that way the clinician will know actually more about the history of the patient, and they can also understand the patient better, and also provide all these kind of notes so that there's more human to human interaction. That's the goal of it. They did some surveys, they did some experiments already, and 93% of the patients experienced better interactions with their healthcare providers who were using it. I think the other 7% did not know how to use it better, probably. But that's the end of the episode. That's the end of the stories this week, Jamie.
Yeah, and I'll guess I'll leave one last thought or one last topic, and this will be a precursor for a future episode, so definitely stay tuned. But we want to talk about, we bring in terms and terminology sometimes during these podcasts or webcast episodes, and there's something that's I'll call it like sweeping the developer community, and it's a term called vibe coding. Vibe coding is all about like I don't know, the way I think about it, it's like getting zen-like with your developer tools, and not just sitting down and coding, but it's a paradigm that leverages artificial intelligence to transform the way that developers think about coding. So this was actually brought up by Andre Karpathy, who's one of the co-founders of OpenAI, and it's a term that relates to give into the vibes, forget about the code exists, like I said, sort of this Zen-like thought. But the intent here is that developers collaborate with the various different AI tools, like something like Composer, and that coupled with Anthropic's AI model. By the way, Claude 3.5 has kind of like been the de facto for, hey, if you're doing code development, use the Anthropic model because it seems to do better at coding, and even more so with Claude 3.7 and Claude 3.7 reasoning, or the thinker model. But the intent here is that you use a AI model coupled with a tool to then build the coding. And there's different tools that have popped up. I'm not talking about things like GitHub Copilot, which is a great tool in of itself, but there's been a whole sort of industry, if you will, that has really flourished and really expanded. And it seems like it's exploded over the last 6 months or so. These are tools like Replit or Cursor that really have integrated fully, and I would say like really coupled to put the AI components first rather than an afterthought. So yeah, that's the intent of vibe coding. We will, in the future, and I kind of alluded to this, we'll have a guest speaker come on and talk about his experiences with leveraging these tools, the concepts of vibe coding, and how it's helped him in real life activities in terms of working with customers. But with that, I'll leave you with this little teaser of what does this actually look like. So this is vibe coding in essence with Cursor. We'll go into this in more detail, but like I said, a little teaser here. But I've been doing some vibe coding myself, being able to use Cursor. And what's really interesting here is that, things like if you're using Visual Studio, by the way, Cursor looks like Visual Studio Code because it's based or built upon that, but then it includes these AI capabilities. So on the far hand right side of this screen, you see this long running chat, which I've had with Cursor, but Cursor provides not just the chat experience, but there's an agent experience integrated within this tool. So I don't know how well it's showing up here, but I've got a very simple starter prompt. But then, and by the way, this project had nothing in it. The starter prompt, the agent, which in this case, by the way, you could pick what model that you want. So DeepSeek is one of them. OpenAI's O1 model. In this case, I actually use Claude 3.7. But you use the model that you want in an agent mode, and this thing just fires off questions and starts to build anything and everything. And what's really cool about this is that you can say just yes, go off and run it, and it'll start to build out your environments, do node installs if you're using Node.js. It actually just builds everything, including all of your application logic. So a game changer. Like I said, I've dabbled a little bit in this, but we'll bring in someone a little bit more qualified and a little bit more focused on some of these tools and really go down into real life examples based upon working with customers. So anyway, wanted to bring up the topic of vibe coding, and we will get into it more deeply into a future episode.
And in a tribute to Andhra Kapati, who coined this word, I will coin another of his quote. Actually, I will quote another of his famous quote, which is, "English is the hottest new programming language," which is what vibe coding actually demonstrates. So, yeah, stay tuned. I'm looking forward to that episode soon. Bye, everyone. Bye, Jamie. See you next week.
Thanks for that.